We are off to a great start today. Can I just say that? When we begin with the right heart, the right mind, the right spirit, surrendered to Him, not just allowing that God would do stuff, but in fact inviting Him into our lives to just change it up, great things happen. Sometimes they're confusing. Sometimes we don't understand why it's going on. And that's okay. We don't have to be fearful. We can trust Him and just go with it, right? It was a beautiful thing. Thank you for that opportunity, my dear sister, because we need those. We need those opportunities. Today is technically the last part of this series I've been doing, Spring is in the Air, where we've just been kind of talking about different things associated with the beginning of a new season. I honestly don't know if it is. I think it is. But God has been moving everything, and I've kind of left an open slate. So technically, next week, we're starting a series called What's Up, Doc? And it's all stories from Luke, because for those of you that may not know, Luke was a physician. And so What's Up, Doc seemed appropriate, however Bugs Bunny it may sound. However, I just forewarn you, I'm going into this next week with a clean slate, and whatever the Lord wants to do, I'm saying yes to. So we might all be surprised next week with something completely different. I have no idea. I'm just going with the flow because that's what's working right now, right? Amen. I do make plans. We do plan ahead. But when God shows up, we say, yep, here I am, Lord. Send me. Just like Isaiah, right? So, although technically this is the last message of this series, I have certainly treated it thusly. Yes, I use the word thusly. It's fun. It's a new word. It's an old word, but it's new. I'm going to bring it back like bell bottoms. Just come on. Like nobody likes bell bottoms. So anyway, never mind. All right, the jokes are lost on you. Bad dad jokes. Maybe I'll get a show someday and make $1 million. Thank you so much, Jamie, for showing up today. That's awesome. So one of the things that I like to do when I'm round in the last corner in a sermon series is I will often try to get what I'm feeling is the most important message, or what I feel like that's kind of been what God is really wanting me to grab onto. I try to put that at the very end. In fact, we do this often with most things, like announcements and things like that, because the truth is that most people will hang on to whatever was told them last, right? If you're given a list of things, we tend to remember the last thing on the list because it was the last thing we heard. And so I often will do this in a sermon series because I want us to hang on to this last point. So that's what I've tried to do today. I hung on to this message. It was originally going to be the first message in this series, and I hung on to the theme and wrote it twice this week because we scrapped the first one and went with the second one. This comes from Mark chapter 12. I'm going to be reading to you verses 28 to 31 where it says this. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, of all of the commandments, which is the most important? The important one, the most important one, answered Jesus, is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart and with all of your soul and with all of your mind and with all of your strength. The second is this. Love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. In Matthew's account of the same interaction, he records that Jesus adds that this is the first and the greatest commandment. So what we're being told here is that the first command, the most important thing for God to get across to us, the first commandment and the most important thing that we could ever do in this life and beyond is love the Lord our God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. So what I want to ask this morning is, what does that mean? When you read this, when you hear this, when you've thought about this, what does it mean in your mind, in your heart, in your soul, in your spirit? What does this mean this morning? When he was asked what mattered most to God, he didn't exegete some specific theological viewpoint. He did not talk about the right or the wrong political stance. Jesus didn't mention a single word about any of the hot button topics of the day or anything else for that matter. He said the single most important thing we could ever do in all of life and beyond is love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. So what does it mean? Because it occurs to me that everything related to God and His kingdom comes out of that. Everything. And if we can't get this, we're not going to get any of the other stuff that God wants us to learn, because it all begins here and it all flows out of here. And if we can't learn not just what it means to love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbors as ourselves, but how to live it, then I don't know if we'll ever be ready for more. So what does it mean? What does it mean to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself? What does it mean? Well, I'm going to say right out of the gate, the very first thing that I think we need to really grab onto is that there is nothing more important than love. Nothing. Nothing anywhere, not on earth, not in heaven, not in any attitude that we could hold or any action that we could take or any life that we could live. There is nothing more important than love. And honestly, I wish this was easier to get. I mean, we understand it. Like it's not complicated. We do understand it, but far too often it seems to stay up here and doesn't translate very easily into owning it in our hearts. In 1 John 13, Jesus said this. He said, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." Jesus said that's how they're going to know. Jesus said that's what was going to set us apart, to make us different, to be His. That is what people would notice, our love for one another. If we don't ever get anything else in all of life, we have to get this, right? Nothing is more important than love. What matters is love. By this, all people will know that we are His disciples if we love one another. And in case you missed it, it's a command. Right? Jesus said, "A new command I give you." This is what we're supposed to rule our lives with. Love. Everything that we are, everything that we do, everything that we say, everything that we even think, everything that we demonstrate, all of it must flow out of this one thing. Love. Our relationship with Him is not about making ourselves better. That is the fruit of the Spirit at work within us. As we manifest His Spirit in the world by living a life of love, it changes us. Our purpose in this world is not transformation. Our purpose is demonstrating the love of God to the broken world around us. Because we've seen it. We understand what has been accomplished, and we have to demonstrate the love that has touched our lives to others. And we're transformed when we do that. We become changed in the process of doing God's love. Our Christ-likeness, our holiness, the transformation that God makes in us, it is nothing more than the work accomplished in us by Him, kind of as a byproduct of demonstrating the love of Jesus to this broken world. So if you're not changing, if you don't feel like you're being sanctified, if you don't feel like you're actually growing in holiness or anything like that in your life, and you're wondering why, then I would suggest that we start by asking the question, where and how am I demonstrating the love of God in this world? See, everything for us begins and ends with this. Love. Everything. One of the things I actually like about Facebook is that I get these really kind of cool videos and stuff that pop up every once in a while. Some of them are just really funny, and some of them really, really touch my heart. Now, don't get me wrong, Facebook is filled with garbage, but sometimes there's really great stuff in there too. And I remember watching a video that popped up in my feed one day, and it was about this guy that he rescues animals. He rescues all kinds of animals. And in this one video that I was watching, somebody had called him about a pit bull that they had found in the wild, and it was clear that this dog had been abused. I mean, he was starving, and he was in bad shape. It was heartbreaking to watch. You could see the bones through the fur, what little fur he had left, and he looked like Chernobyl dog because his fur was falling out. He was so malnutrition. Clearly, he was terrified of people. So I don't know what happened to the dog, but it was awful to watch. But this guy, he was so soft, he was so kind, he was so gentle, and he just sat there for hours and hours and hours on the pavement. There was a little broken thing of dirt and concrete, and the dog was hiding inside. And he just sat out there, and he would put food out and then put more, little bits, and eventually the dog would come, and he got close enough that he would sort of eat it off the ends of his fingers, and then he would give him a bit of a bigger piece, and he would just gently touch him, just gently touch him, and before long he was actually able to sort of pet the dog while he ate something out of his other hand, and after a little while longer, and honestly I don't know how long this process was, but it seemed like hours and hours maybe. The dog let him put a leash on him, and they were able to take him over to his vehicle, and they brought him to a medical facility where they cleaned him up. They did a bunch of stuff to help him. And then the video jumps forward about a year, and they show the dog again. And you would not believe what had happened to this dog. Because other than you could tell just from the markings and stuff that it was the same dog, it did not look like the same dog. His like tail going a ding, 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 ding like this, and he's jumping all over the place. He's acting like a puppy. He's all excited. He's licking people in the face. He's playing with the kids. He's chasing the ball. He's doing everything that you would ever hope to see a dog doing. He's healthy. He's got fur. He's got meat on his bones and all that stuff. He's like totally transformed, this dog. See, over the year, I guess this dog had been placed with a foster family that specializes in abused animals, and they had taken this dog into the home, and they'd done all this stuff for like a year with the dog. And so the interviewer, of course, is curious and said, "Can you tell us what's the secret? How did you do this with the dog?" And the couple looked almost confused and very simply said, "We loved him." It's powerful, right? It's powerful, but it shouldn't be surprising, honestly. We shouldn't be surprised because the truth is, love really does always win. When we love, it changes us. It changes the people that we're loving. When we love, it breaks down barriers. It heals pain. It restores. Our job, our purpose is to love. You can try and put all the theology you want on it. It's not going to do any good. Our job, our purpose is to love. So love. We've been commanded to do it, so do it. We're supposed to live it, so live it. It's been offered to us, so we should be offering it to others. Jesus said, "As I have loved you, so you must love one another." There's no greater command or cause or purpose than love. Remember, when Jesus was asked, he said the most important thing was love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. There's nothing more important than love. Nothing. And please, please understand that living love is about so much more than just occasionally doing kind things for people. It also means not being unkind the rest of the time. I catch myself being grumpy and I go, oh, right? Because I dropped the ball. Living love is living what God revealed to us in Philippians 2, 1-8, where Paul wrote this. He says, therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, any comfort from his love, if any sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. That's doing stuff that says like, well, I think, or, I want, me. We do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, we value others above ourselves, not looking to our own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. In our relationships with one another, we have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant and made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Last week we talked about running in such a way so as to get the prize. That's kind of what this is about, isn't it? Live in such a way so as to lift others up. Be the greatest encourager you know. Consider everyone everywhere more important. Be the shoulder to lean on. Be the support someone needs. Bring joy to the people in your life by loving them on purpose, even if you disagree with them, with their theology or their stance on something or their political persuasion or how they might feel about vaccines, masks, and protocols and stuff. Jesus said the single most important thing we could ever do is love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. So what does that mean? It means that there's nothing more important than love, but it also means that nothing else has any meaning without love. As a disciple of Jesus, there are all kinds of things that we're supposed to be doing. Right? There's work that we're called to. There are disciplines that we're supposed to take on. There are practices and traditions in our faith that we're supposed to be living every day. But God has made it clear that none of it means anything without love. Not a thing. In 1 Corinthians, in his first letter to the Corinthian church, Paul wrote this in chapter 13. He says, if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but I have not love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can literally move mountains, but I have not love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and I surrender my body to the flames, but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects. It always trusts. Always hopes. Always perseveres. Love never fails. Love never fails. Without love, nothing else matters. And from this scripture, it sounds like it has an awful lot more to do with what we do than what we feel, doesn't it? I heard a story about a couple who had started going to couples therapy because they had a lot of difficulty and challenges in their marriage. And this was kind of like a last-ditch attempt to hold it together. And in the middle of one of their sessions, the wife is talking about how there's no point in trying anymore because her husband doesn't love her anymore. Doesn't think he has for a long, long time. And the husband says, but I tell you I love you all the time. And she says, yeah, but you never show me. See, real love is something that is demonstrated, not something that we simply say or necessarily feel. It takes effort. It takes commitment. It takes courage to love. And it takes all this because love is a demonstrated reality, not just an abstract idea that people think or feel. So you can say loving things till the cows come home, and it's not going to mean anything to anyone until your actions match your words, right? Does that make sense? Like, until we're actually doing the things that we're saying, if we're backing it up with our actions, then it makes sense. Then it's real. Then it's something we know we can trust. You know, one of the things I've always found kind of interesting about the Scriptures is that whenever Jesus talks about the way that we're supposed to love God, he always mentions, or usually anyway, mentions the way we treat each other. In some fashion, he says something about how we treat each other. In fact, not only does Jesus talk about it in such a way that we see that they're both as important as the other, but more than that, he talks about how we treat each other as if it's the way we show God we love him. I mean, we're already talking about how Jesus said the most important thing we could ever do is love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbors as ourselves. But in that passage alone, he ends that with, there is no commandment greater than these, and then connects them together with that statement. You see, he puts them together. He's saying that the most important thing we can do is love God with everything we are, but he's also saying that nothing else is more important than how we treat each other, than loving each other. But it gets even more intense than that, if you believe it. See, if you go to Matthew, in Matthew 24, Jesus he's getting pestered about the end of the world. He's getting pestered about the end of days. And he starts to talk about it, and giving people these illustrations to try and explain to them, it's not for you to know. Our Father knows when things are going to happen, period. Right? And he keeps going for a little while. He talks about the end times, and then he begins this discourse. He starts telling a bunch of stories so that people will understand what the most important things are that we can do with the time that we have, because the end is coming. And we get to Matthew 25, beginning in verse 34, he says this. He says, then the king, he's talking about himself here. He says, then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom, prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we ever see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? The king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Then he will say to those on his left, depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me. And they also will answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger and needing clothes, or sick and in prison and did not help you? And he will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me. They will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. In this incredibly important passage that, quite frankly, often gets overlooked, Jesus isn't just saying that it's important to love the people in our lives. He's saying it's one of the ways that we demonstrate our love for God. And that demonstration is meant to be much more than just thinking nice thoughts about Jesus or taking time out in a day to pray. We should be doing those things, but our life in Him is meant to be so much more. It's about Him being able to look at our lives and see the desire that we have for Him in the effort we put into loving Him. Now I want to share something with you. It's an illustration from something that Tracy wrote many years ago with her permission. It came out of a journal or a message that she had given at a ladies' conference. Anyway, she says this. She says, to give some background, when my husband, Aaron, and I started dating, and this is something I've never even told him about, I did what a lot of girls do when they first meet a potential mate. I did the name game. You know, where you try out what your new name would be if you were to marry them and see how it sounds. I had done it many times before, but it never sounded right. But this time was different. For the first time, I tried out what was to be my potential new name, Tracy Birch. And in that instant, it struck me. I knew, even though we had just started dating, that this was going to be my name. I could feel it. And that may not be everyone's experience, but it was mine. After only about 3 months of dating, this is true. It's all true. After only about 3 months of dating, Aaron proposed to me. But I was just not ready at that point to make that decision, so I had to tell him not yet. So sidebar, I had to ask my wife 6 times. Story for another time. All right. He must have been hopeful because he gave me the ring anyway, and after about 6 months, I gave him back the ring and I suggested that he try asking me one more time in a romantic, surprising way, and I would pretend not to know what was happening. Now, why was it that if I knew from the moment I played the name game with Aaron's last name that I was going to marry him, that I made it so difficult for him to get me to agree to marry him? Ah, the mystery of woman. And so I realized also part of the mystery of God. If I knew I wanted to marry Aaron, and apparently if he was proposing marriage to me, he was interested in me as well, what was I waiting for? Well, I wanted him to have to make an effort for me and to pursue me. I wanted him to court me and win me over, and I wanted him to desire me. Not only did I want these things, but I also wanted to know the depth of his desire for me. He told me he loved me and wanted to be with me, but I wanted to see through his effort that he meant what he said. And isn't this the same of God? Now, this isn't to say that it was Aaron's effort to win me over in and of itself that proved his heart, but rather it was the desire for me that I felt in his actions that proved his heart. I think this is what God is desperately longing for in us. For us to desire him with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and for him to feel that desire in the effort that we have in having a relationship with him. It's pretty smart, right? It's true. In any relationship, it's true. Our actions are either going to demonstrate our words or they will contradict them. And in our pursuit of God, our lives are either going to demonstrate our love for him through how we treat him and each other, or they won't. There's no middle ground. They either will or they won't. We'll either just have words or we'll have love. We need to live it. Are you someone who lives it? Are you someone who chases after God? Are you loving him? Are you loving the people in your life to show him how much you love him? Or is there something maybe that needs to change in your life in order to love him with all that you are and love others as yourself? You know, in 2 Corinthians, in the second letter that Paul wrote to the Corinthian church, in chapter 15, he says this. He says, examine yourselves to see whether you are still in the faith. Test yourselves, he says. You ever check to see how you're doing with this whole idea of loving others? I mean, sometimes all we need to do is ask ourselves some simple, maybe difficult, but some simple questions. Do I say nice things to people sometimes, but then turn around and respond with frustration towards them when I disagree with them? Do I tell people that I love them only to turn around and judge them for believing something differently than I do? Do I consider the people around me, their needs, their insecurities, their discomforts, their fears, more important than my own? Am I angry with somebody but won't go talk to them about it? Because these are just a few areas when I ask myself these questions. These are just a few small areas of life where our actions are either going to demonstrate love or contradict it. Heidi Baker wrote, "Love will cost you everything. Laying down your life, living a life of passion and compassion, giving without expecting, feeling God's very heartbeat, surrendering to His rhythm and following the Lamb wherever He goes, to the ends of the earth." Why go to the ends of the earth if you have nothing to give? The only currency that will heal every culture is ceaseless love. To be a minister, and that is who we are as followers of Jesus, to be a minister, we must walk like Jesus, talk like Jesus, and be like Jesus for a broken and dying world. Walk like Jesus, talk like Jesus, be like Jesus. Nothing else has any value or worth without love. And love has to be demonstrated, because without the demonstration of love, it's just words. Back in the mid-90s, there was a movie that came out called Mars Attacks. And I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I like stupid movies sometimes, and this was a stupid movie. It's a science fiction spoof, comedy / weird movie. Had an all-star cast, Glenn Close, Michael J. Fox, Annette Bening, Jack Nicholson. They're all in it. They all make appearances, all for the sake of a little bit of humor. And the movie's ridiculous. Don't get me wrong. You may not want to watch it because it's pretty dumb. But it was a lot of fun when it came out. Anyway, in this film, there's these ridiculous cartoon-looking aliens that come to make contact with Earth. And at their first encounter, there's an electronic translator. All the speakers are up. And this electronic translator deciphers the alien language so that all the people and us at home can understand what the aliens are saying. And so there's this silly robotic-sounding voiceover when the aliens first arrive that says, "Greetings, we come in peace." And then they abruptly start opening fire and shooting everybody with their laser guns, right? And it's instant mayhem. It's like a war zone out on the tarmac. People are running everywhere, getting zapped, and they poof into smoke, and they're running around, and there's all this. But you keep hearing this translator going off as the aliens are running around shooting everybody, and the voiceover keeps saying, "Wait, stop, we come in peace." Okay, it's a stupid illustration, but you get what I'm saying. There's a truth there that remains, isn't there? The most important thing is love, and nothing else has any meaning with love. And without the demonstration of love, it's just words. It's not real. It's counterfeit. John Wesley once said, one of the principal rules of religion is to lose no occasion of serving God. And since He's invisible to our eyes, we are to serve Him in our neighbor, loving our neighbors, which He receives as if done to Himself in person, standing visibly before us. Jesus is love. God is love. Jesus' very life is the definition of demonstrated love. We talked a little bit about this last week. Even if you took away all the miracles of Jesus, His life still demonstrated the love of God to everyone. His heart was always positioned in love. He was confronted by every manner of sin, and yet He was always positioned in love. He lived with them. He ate with them. He spent so much time with sinners that people called Him the friend of sinners. Please understand, only Jesus can deal with sin. You can't, I can't, none of us has a magic wand that can deal with that kind of stuff. Only Jesus can. It's not up to you or to me or to anyone else to judge anyone anywhere for sin. What we do is demonstrate His love, bring people to Him so that He can do what He does so well. Let Him worry about everything else. As a disciple of Jesus, there are all kinds of things that we are supposed to do. Work that we're called to, disciplines that we're to take on, practices and traditions of our faith that we're supposed to be a part of. But none of it has any meaning whatsoever without love. Jesus said the most important thing we could ever do is love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. He added that there is no commandment greater than those. I don't know about you, but I want this church to be the church that gets this one better than anybody else. All the theology in the world means nothing without this. All the mission statements and ministry endeavors we could ever come up with mean nothing without this. This is about a lot more than just doing nice things for nice people. It's about actually walking in love and unity. It's about being and staying in right relationship with each other and going to a brother or sister when things have kind of broken apart so that the relationships can be reconciled. It's about a willingness maybe to have difficult conversations when they're necessary so that we can reconcile broken relationships. It's about making amends whenever possible so that we remain as one. It's about forgiving the mistakes of others. And it's about forgiving the stuff they did on purpose. It's about letting go of any and all anger because that has no place in the kingdom of God. It's about choosing not to be offended by whatever. It's about getting to a place where every relationship and every corner of our church family is filled with the fruit of the Spirit. Love, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Love the Lord your God with everything that you are. And love your neighbor as yourself. That's the people in your life. Can we do that? Can we be that? My heart cries for that. We're pretty good. I will admit, we are pretty good. But we want to be better than that, don't we? We want to be better than everyone at this. Even if we never get there. Even if everybody's just as good. Better yet, if everybody's just as good. But we want to give this everything we've got. And honestly, sometimes it's not going to be easy. Sometimes it does mean we have to have awkward conversations and stuff so that we can get there, so that we can remain in love with one another, together as one. We're brothers and sisters. We love each other. We love each other. You're not all smiling yet. You need to know we love each other. This is a good thing. And it's going to be great. Let's be great. I'm going to invite the worship team to come.